You're listening to The Morning Takeover with Wisdom's Daughter and James Mack on 92.7 WKRA FM, your station for information and inspiration. Breaking news, current events, and trending stories on The Morning Takeover at 9. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Morning Takeover with James and Wisdom. I'm Wisdom's daughter. I've got James Mack in the building. Thank you so much for tuning in. We've got an awesome show for you guys today. But first, we're going to hear from James. He's got the local weather. He's got a couple of stories that we need to talk about. Children losing their Medicaid. We've got the Surgeon General talking about gun control. All this and more on today's show. James, how you doing, sir?
Why, good morning, Wisdom. How are you?
I'm doing good. I was dreaming about mules last night because yesterday you kept talking about 40 acres and a mule. I told you I didn't want no
Yeah,
mule. So
but
I didn't
see,
count sheep last night. I counted mules.
mules are Cadillacs now, but they used to call Cadillacs, my uncles and my aunts used to call Cadillacs hogs. So I don't think
Okay.
I don't know about hogs or anything like that. But good
If
morning
it's
to
a Cadillac,
everyone. I wanted to say good morning to you, Wisdom. We got rain here today in our area, and we got mixed clouds with some sun, some scattered thunderstorms expected today, with some gusty winds, possibly some small hail in some places in outlining areas, and we're going to have a high of about like uh, upper 80s and about 88, 89 degrees here today, with the winds out of the south coming all the way from the south, and the south always messing with us. South meaning that Gulf of Mexico air and humidity, about 5 to 10 miles an hour. Right now, in Oxford is 73, it's 74 in Olive Branch, and in Memphis, greater Memphis area is 73 degrees. And we're asking you to really be careful on the roadways. No accidents have been reported as of yet, and we hope that everyone will have a great commute. I got something, Wisdom, here. There's a story coming off of the AP wires about the Surgeon General declaring gun violence a public health emergency. And as you know, there's so many instances that's going around this past weekend. There has been several mass shootings, and the Surgeon General said that he is just upset with what's going on and that Congress has to do something about it. He also says people want to be able to walk to their neighborhoods and go be able to be safe. And he also told the press service in the interview that was Surgeon General Murtha. He was a Trump nominated Surgeon General. Trump fired him because of his stance during the pandemic, and President Biden brought him back. But he made a lot of sense when he said Americans should be in a place where all of us can go to school, we can go to work, we can go to the supermarket, and go out of our house to our houses of worship and not have to worry about being at risk to gun violence. You know, he also says that to drive down the gun deaths, he's calling for a total ban of automatic rifles and to introduce universal background checks. They should be doing that already. And for any purchase of any weapon, and to regulate the industry, those people that manufacture these weapons, that they won't be so easily accessible without reducing the Second Amendment rights of Americans. And every day we get stories that we don't kind of broadcast about the gun violence. I know that there's a lot of gun violence uh, during the summer months, and the children and kids are out of school. And believe it or not, it's the kids. What you think about that, Wisdom?
I think it's an important issue. I'm glad that we're talking about it. We on this show have talked about gun control at length, especially after the Supreme Court. And I know that Clarence Thomas had a lot to do with that, with them making it legal now for people to purchase these accessories called a bump stock that can basically
Yeah.
turn a a handgun into an automatic weapon, turning a semi-automatic weapon into an automatic weapon. So basically, with a simple add-on or accessory, you can have a machine gun. And we've seen what gun violence has done to communities. I don't know if you heard about the young lady, or not young lady, but I believe it was an 8-year-old girl here in Atlanta who was caught in the crossfire. The police were firing at a suspect and actually ended up shooting into a vehicle and hitting an 8-year-old girl in her arm. This young girl did survive, but you can imagine how traumatic that is. And so, as we are coming up on this election, I want to hear what the candidates plan to do in terms of gun control, what their priorities are. We don't want to take away anyone's constitutional rights to carry, and certainly Georgia is an open carry state, but we need to be responsible, and we need to make sure that we're not making it so easy for people who should not have guns to get them. And that means
And
that
then it's
vetting
such an
process.
epidemic in our community, and when you and it's mostly broadcast and talked about in uh, black communities and communities of color, Hispanic communities are taking note and saying, well, we need to get the guns off the street. And then if you look at the gun laws and the restrictions that have been lifted over the years, there was a time that you could not carry a weapon. Now you can open carry, especially in the South. You can open carry anywhere. And it seems like it's the wild, wild west. And wisdom, I don't know. It's just heartbreaking. You were saying something about Atlanta. And in my home state of Illinois, there was a gentleman that served his country in the armed forces. Also, he was a 30-year veteran of the Chicago Police Department, and he worked with Homeland Security after he retired from the police department as a bomb technician. And I was amazed. I didn't know he was the longest serving bomb technician on the bomb squad for um, the Chicago Police Department. Our thoughts, our prayers are with all of those first responders and those families that have lost their family members, and also people in our communities that serve our communities. But do you think that the gun laws are just completely out of whack, or the permission of guns are just they just going outrageous with open carry? What do you think?
I think the laws as it stands right now are a little too loose. I think they're making it too easy for people who should not have weapons to acquire them. I think there needs to be a better vetting process. I'm curious to know if the Surgeon General had any recommendations in terms of changes in our gun laws and what the Surgeon General is recommending. Did you see anything in the
Well,
news?
he's really recommending Congress to step in and ban these weapons that are on the street right now. Who needs a machine gun or AK-47? And
Exactly.
also with the handgun, they have these Glock switches, they call them. You can put this on a handgun, and this switch will allow you to pull the trigger, and it'll just rapid fire, just like if it was a machine gun.
Right. That's the
I
bump.
like hunting. Yeah, the bump starters, but then for handguns, they got this switch. They call it a Glock switch. It's a little bitty. It's no bigger than a screw of some kind, but it's a switch you can like switch it on, switch it off. You can squeeze it, and it row like 9 bullets in seconds or what have you. And it's really disturbing that our young people have access to these weapons. And people are saying, well, we got a right to bear arms and we have a right to protect our families. Yes, I believe that. But when you look at what's going on and how outrageous it is out there in certain communities, it's really something that we need to take a look at. I'm not stop. I don't believe people should stop hunting or sports shooting or whatever the case may be, or even protecting your home. But I think that there should be some strenuous background checks, and there should be some kind of a way that we can decipher. or to keep these young people from having these guns. That's what I'm more afraid of. It's more and more young people, teenagers, younger than teenagers, preteens that got these guns. And then a baby at one of the schools in the Mid South had a handgun in its backpack, amongst other things that were
A
there.
lot of that.
And it's
Seeing
wow.
we're
So
seeing a lot of that. We're seeing kids that are getting a hold of their parents' weapons in the house and
yeah,
using them on their parents. You know, you've
yeah,
got children that are being put into juvenile detention centers, and some of them being tried as adults because they found a firearm in the house and got upset with their parents, like children do,
wow,
and pulled the trigger. You
well,
mentioned
I
about
know, I know.
protecting you mentioned about
Hmm.
protecting rights, and well, what about our right to live? What about our rights to
Yeah.
walk down the street and not have to worry about being hit by, flying bullets? So
And
again,
then we got the situation also that the teachers, there's a bill in the Tennessee legislature that would give certain teachers with certain firearms training a right, or give them the opportunity to carry their weapons in the classroom. Now, Wisdom, I had a teacher that had something that called she called the heat. It was a paddle of some sort. Yeah, you felt the heat after and that was the only thing that that teacher needed, and a stern voice, and you straightened up really quick. Nowadays, I would be afraid that if a teacher had a gun, and with the children not being, to me, not having the guidance that they need necessary, like I had when I was a youngster, I would be afraid that they would, that somebody might get mad, or one of them teachers get mad, one of them kids jump in their faces or say something, because you can't do nothing to the children. You can't really even discipline a child in the school. You would be put up on assault. But then those workers and those teachers that have to teach our children and have to deal with them the majority of the time of the day, um, and just get set off. Everybody has a boiling point, and you don't know. I mean, I'm afraid of that. I'm really afraid of that.
I don't think that's a good idea. I wouldn't even entertain the thought of allowing firearms and weapons in schools. It's just way too dangerous. And you talked about the heat. Well, I think I told you before that I went to Catholic school and we had nuns, and the nuns had yardsticks. Do you remember yardstick?
Yeah,
Okay.
you made
So,
me you made me think of the Blues Brothers when they went. Jake and Elwood went to back to the nurse to the orphanage, and the
mhm.
lady, the nun, was up there with the stick. But could you imagine Mother Teresa with a Glock 45, AK-47
Oh
strapped to?
my God. Listen, the yardstick was scary enough. I mean, these nuns used to smack that yardstick on the desk and it would make a loud sound that sounded almost like what could be perceived as a gunshot. It was scary. But no,
I couldn't imagine you in Catholic school though. I'm just
nuns and guns, it may rhyme, but that's
wow.
not a pairing that I'm gonna support. No nuns
Well,
with guns.
we're gonna be keeping our eyes on this story. I think I need to do a little more research and find out what the official stance, or what the plan is for the Surgeon General. What's his next move? I really be interested in that. So you're gonna have me thinking all morning about Mother Teresa and
Guns,
Mother
nuns with
Superior with
guns.
her stick, whooping folks and everything. But hey, and other news, there's a real problem with Medicaid expansion in the South, and Republican governors have rejected the opportunity to receive federal funds, Medicaid funds, to expand Medicare for the working poor and the poor. Over 110,000 Mississippi children, Wisdom, and this breaks my heart, uh, lost their Medicare coverage in the past year.
Wow.
And you know that if you had a family of four or five, God forbid, it would be a family of 12, like like I came from, and you weren't able to get the benefit of having Medicare, a Medicaid or Medicare. I don't know which one it falls into. I know you work, that you have some kind of uh,
If it's
attachment to
kids,
an
it's
institute.
Medicaid. It's Medicaid for kids.
Okay. Well, over 110,000 have been purged from the rolls, and a total of 150,000 Mississippians, 150,000, have lost their health care coverage in the past year and lost their Medicaid. It just been dwindling. After the pandemic, there was an increase uh, of people that had to be on Medicare due to the pandemic. And around that time in 20, just say for instance, June of last year, the number of covered children had peaked to, of children only, had peaked to 456,314. By May of this year, the rolls fell more than 110,000, and it fell to 344,517. That's too many. One is too many, especially in poor rural. There's still poor rural Delta. Hey to everybody in the Delta in Mississippi. Uh, the hospitals are closing. They will not. It's not that the funding is not their wisdom. It is because it is the governors that's saying that Obamacare is Obamacare. Well, it's health care for everybody, and Medicare shouldn't be expanded. But those legislators and politicians got Blue Cross, Blue Shield, Aetna.
Look at
Oh, I'm
that. So
sorry,
they
I
have
didn't mean to say
private
all that. I
insurance,
should.
and
Yeah, they got private
yeah,
insurance. I'm
they're not
sorry.
pushing
They got
for
private insurance.
they're not
Hmm.
pushing for a decline or a
Right.
decrease in private insurance. What is
Right.
happening in Mississippi? Because yesterday you were talking to us about the fact that the enrollment numbers are low. Children are not returning back to school. Now we're seeing children who are losing their Medicaid. We need to ensure that the people of Mississippi have a voice, especially in those rural areas, as you said.
Yeah.
And so, if you are from the Mississippi area and you are listening to our broadcast, please get in contact with us. Let us know your story. We
Yes.
want to give you a voice. We want to highlight what's happening in areas like Mississippi because, again, we're in an election year. This is the
Yeah.
best time. We're going to have, a number of candidates running who are going to be coming to all states. They will eventually make it to
Mm.
Mississippi, and we want to make sure
Yeah.
that your voice is heard because it sounds like there's a lot going on in the state of
Yeah.
Mississippi.
Yeah.
And yeah, what
And
area?
in addition to that, and the area is mostly rural, and mostly poor, and
Mm,
mostly black. That because of the lack of one transportation to jobs, there are opportunities, but when you have communities that have been left destitute, and you have a state legislators and legislation that won't go through, and they're fighting, and the senators and the representatives, the Republican Party said no, and rural hospitals are closing, which leaves a health gap that you would have to say, for instance, there's a place called Marks, Mississippi. Just an example. In between Marks, Mississippi, there's a town called the city of Clarksdale and the city of Batesville, east and west. Okay, that's 19 to 20 miles either direction to get to that particular city for a population of about 10,000 people. You get sick, you got to be transported. They closed the local hospital in that county, which is called Quitman County. They closed the hospital because the state of Mississippi refuses to receive Medicaid dollars that would come into the state to keep those hospitals going. They refuse to, for some odd reason, they refuse to receive that money. And it's almost $1 billion that they would receive annually to keep those hospitals open. Now, I'm not just saying black people get sick. Everybody gets sick, and it'll be a shame that you have to drive. First of all, you got to find somebody. Transportation is bad. You got to find somebody to take you. If you get an ambulance, because Medicaid and Medicare takes care of the ambulance services, well, they might not be available for everybody in that community. And if you had that local hospital open with those funds, you could possibly save a lot of lives. My mother lives there. She's 92. Hey, Ida. She's 92. God forbid something happened and we couldn't get her to the hospital in the event of an emergency. So it's a real crisis. And this is one of the stories we're going to be looking into more and asking our legislators to come and give their opinion about really, they're going to have to do, they've got some explaining to do, Wisdom.
Wow. Yeah. Again, it sounds like there's a lot going on. So definitely we want to continue to follow this story. As you said, there's a health disparity with hospitals closing and children losing their Medicaid. We need health insurance. We need health insurance. Children need to be able to see a doctor and get their eyes checked and go to the dentist and all those things. So we'll definitely will continue following that story. And we'll be right back after the break. Wisdom's Daughter and James Mack are dominating the airways with the Morning Takeover on 92.7 WKRA FM, your station for information and inspiration. Would you like to advertise your business on the radio? We're seeking sponsors for the Morning Takeover. Space is limited, so act now. Send an email to morningtakeoverjw@gmail.com for more information. You're listening to The Morning Takeover with Wisdom's Daughter and James Mack on 92.7 WKRA FM, your station for information and inspiration. And we are back. Welcome if you're just tuning in to The Morning Takeover with James and Wisdom. I'm Wisdom's daughter. I'm here with James Mack, and we're going to be talking now about the Trump situation, the shocking truth about Trump's agenda. A judge has loosened Trump's gag order. So now Donald Trump is free to talk about the jurors and the witnesses and all the prosecutor and all those things in the case for which he was found guilty of 34, I believe it was 34 felony charges. And that and more. And so we'll also be getting into a little bit more of what's happening with the facts that are coming out of the mouths of Biden and Trump, because it sounds like some of them have gotten their facts a little bit twisted in regards to inflation, jobs, and tax policy. So we'll talk about that. We do talk a lot about Donald Trump, but we're going to do some fact checking from both parties. And so yesterday, for those of you who tuned in, we were talking about the evangelicals who were basically saying we've all broken the 10 commandments, and they are still backing up Donald Trump because they're not voting for a pastor. They're just looking for someone that can lead the country. And apparently the person who they feel should be leading the country doesn't need to, it's okay for him to be a felon. It's okay that he has broken probably all of the 10 commandments. It's okay that he can't recite any form of scripture as long as he pushes their agenda. So we talked about that yesterday. Let's talk about this gag order situation, and then we're going to get into part two of what will America look like if Donald Trump becomes president again, serves a second term. And so now Trump can criticize witnesses who testified against him because a judge has ruled, and this is the same judge that oversaw his criminal trial, has now loosened the rules governing what Donald Trump can say about the trial. Now, his gag order would be lifted after his July 11th sentencing. And that's something that we need to keep reminding ourselves of, is that Donald Trump still has to be sentenced. We don't know what the outcome of that sentencing is going to be. But a judge on this past Tuesday loosened a gag order on Donald Trump in his Manhattan criminal case, allowing the former president to criticize witnesses who took the stand against him, as well as others involved in the trial that led to his conviction. The judge, Juan Merchan, who presided over Mr. Trump's 7-week trial this spring, ruled that Mr. Trump is now free to complain about the prosecution's witnesses, including his former fixer, Michael Cohen. Once Donald Trump is sentenced on July 11th, the judge ruled he can publicly assail others who are currently covered by the gag order, including prosecutors and their relatives. And we know from Donald Trump's history that he is not going to hold back, and he will take every opportunity to speak his mind. Mr. Trump, the presumptive Republican presidential nominee, presumptive because he still has to be sentenced, and we don't know what the outcome of that is going to be. He's still subject to a different order prohibiting him from releasing the identities of jurors or publicly attacking them by name. So he can't do that. However, Justice Merchan's ruling basically said that Mr. Trump, as I said, can now complain broadly about the jury that convicted him. The judge appeared conflicted about his decision involving the jury on Tuesday, writing that it would be this court's strong preference to extend those protections, but he said that he felt the law required him to drop the restrictions. The unwinding of the order could unleash Donald Trump's wrathful rhetoric about the people involved in the case against him, just as he prepares to debate President Biden this week. And so, President Biden and presumptive Republican candidate Donald Trump will be going head to head this Thursday, I believe, starting around 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And I believe that would be 6 p.m. Central Standard Time. And so Donald Trump referenced the ruling in a fundraising appeal Tuesday afternoon and echoed his baseless claims that the outcome of the trial had been predetermined. Here's Donald Trump. "I'm finally free to talk about the rigged trial that convicted me in New York," he wrote, adding that the judge's decision had come just in time for my debate with Crooked Joe. Justice Merchan imposed the gag order before the trial began as Donald Trump berated Mr. Cohen, the prosecutors, and the Manhattan jury pool, which leans heavily Democratic. During the trial, Donald Trump violated that order 10 times, resulting in $10,000 in fines. Well, if they had made it $10 million in fines, maybe Donald Trump would have kept his mouth shut. The gag order did not cover Justice Merchan and Mr. Bragg personally, though it did prohibit Donald Trump from attacking their families. Before the trial, Donald Trump repeatedly attacked the judge's daughter, who is a Democratic political consultant. Justice Merchan, who not only oversaw the former president's case, but was overseeing that of Stephen Bannon, his fiery advisor, became a focus of criticism for supporters of Donald Trump. Mr. Bannon, who was set to surrender Monday on a federal contempt of Congress conviction, faces state charges that he defrauded donors who wanted to contribute money to building a wall along the southern border. He's set to go to trial in September. Now, Justice Merchan has been reassigned from that case because of court scheduling conflicts, according to a letter from an administrative judge. But in Donald Trump's case, he was convicted, as we know, in late May on all 34 felony counts for falsifying business records related to his cover-up of a sex scandal with adult entertainer Stormy Daniels during his 2016 presidential run. The verdict, of course, as we know, he was found guilty, making Donald Trump a felon. He can't get around that. He's a felon. James, he may try to get around it. Can't get around that one. Definitely not.
Well, why do you think your man in New York, your judge in New York, not your judge, but you know that's your town. Why would he relax? Now Donald Trump is talking about his family and his staff, and why do he get a pass? Well, but I mean, I can kind of see it a little bit because the convention is coming up, and please stay tuned to us during those conventions times of the Republican National Convention and the Democratic National Convention, which I will be reporting live from the DNC convention and also covering the RNC in Milwaukee, and DNC is in Chicago. But I had to put that out there. But why does your judge feel that Donald Trump deserves this pass to just say what he wants to say? I mean, tell me the New York way. Why do I'm a Chi-Town boy from the NYC. Tell me,
James. I don't believe that he, according to this, he didn't really want to do it, but I guess according to the law, he felt that the laws are not always designed to be they're designed to be fair, but it doesn't always amount to that because the law can't always account for every little nuanced thing. And so technically there was no legal reason for Supreme Court Justice Merchan to continue the gag order. I mean, the trial is over. And he's being sentenced on July 11th. So he basically said, hey, listen, after your sentence, you can say what you want. Begrudgingly, I don't think this was something that he really wanted, but Donald Trump takes every opportunity to try to say that he's being treated unfairly, that he's being railroaded, that it's rigged, fake news, he's a victim. And so I think the justice just
But
wanted to
but then
ensure
he
that
needs
he
to
would follow the
understand that
law.
he's a felon. He's a felon. He's a
Well,
felon. 34 times. They
he's
wouldn't let
admitted
me come
now.
to the. I probably couldn't get into the Waffle House. All them felons. I couldn't get a job probably at the
Couldn't
Waffle
work
House.
in the
But
school. I'll tell you that. Couldn't work in the school.
I
There's a
couldn't be
number
nothing.
there's a number of jobs that Donald Trump would not qualify for because he's a convicted felon. So why is he able to qualify to be president? And some other interesting things that came out of this news article. So let's see. There was something about. So the New York Police Department logged 56 actionable threats against Mr. Bragg, against Alvin L. Bragg and his prosecutors. So 56 actionable threats against Mr. Bragg, his family, and employees at the district attorney's office since early April. That's according to an affidavit provided with the filing. Now, these threats were evidently made by supporters of Donald Trump, included a post disclosing the address of one of Mr. Bragg's employees and bomb threats made on the first day of the trial targeting two people involved in the case. So, I mean, this has gotten really, really serious. Other threats were homicidal messages directed at Mr. Bragg or his employees, including, "We will unalive you all. You are unalived. Your life is done."
Well,
This
wait a
is
minute. Hold it. I mean, it makes now he's making threats, talking
not
about he's
not
gonna
not not Donald Trump. This is his
do
supporters
this.
doing this.
It's,
This was
yeah, but then
Donald
he
Trump's
incites these
supporters.
people to do crazy things and say they're going to unalive people, and he don't think that these threats are serious. And I think that the Judge Merchan, you had it right. Judge Merchan had it right when he imposed that gag order on Donald Trump to let him know, hey, you can't just say any and everything that you want to say. And he abided. He's the first time I seen him do something that obeyed something that somebody told him to do was Judge Merchan. Let me give you a shout out there in NYC. Y'all tough out there. Y'all make him do right because I guess y'all know him.
New York does not play. And you know what? The prosecutors actually said the same thing that you just said, that these threats were directly connected to Donald Trump's dangerous rhetoric. And so he has incited people. A lot of these people feel like they're acting on his behalf, they're acting in his stead. They're on a mission for Trump. Okay. And with him doing things like holding the Bible upside down across the street from a church and doing other symbols. I've seen him do the three finger, symbol. These are all things that he's doing that incites hate, and not just hate, but incites a dangerous level of racism. Let's just remember also that Donald Trump is still facing up to 4 years in prison. So now he may or may not ever see the inside of a cell, but Justice Merchan could sentence him to probation or home confinement. So there is still a possibility that he will not be able to run in his race. That is still on the table. It is not off the table. So we'll just have to wait and see. But it's really interesting. I know Donald Trump is going to light X, formerly known as Twitter, on fire. His little thumbs are going to be swollen 24 hours from the time that he's sent. As soon as this gag order is lifted, he is going to set X on fire. Here's another story also that we're going to get into. So I talked about the fact that we're going to do some fact checking, because we talk a lot about Donald Trump, and some of it is not in the most positive light, because he doesn't always do the most positive things. I mean, he does things that warrant people talking badly about him. And then we're going to get into the rest of his agenda that we didn't finish yesterday. But let's do some fact checking, because I want to be fair. And I want to, I want to look at both sides of the coin, so to speak. And so a news article published by the New York Times, they fact-checked claims that both Donald Trump and President Biden made about inflation, jobs, and tax policy. And here's what they found. So, right now, President Biden's biggest challenge is that he's still grappling with how to address one of his biggest weaknesses, and that's inflation, which what they're saying, the numbers, is that inflation's kind of cooled down a little bit, but it did soar in his first years in office. So right now, inflation is in a better place. However, former president and convicted felon, now convicted felon Donald Trump, his frequent economic boasts are undermined by mass job losses and supply chain disruptions wrought by the pandemic. And see, supply chain disruptions, we saw and felt issues from that long after the pandemic was considered technically stable or just about over. There are still
But
issues with.
wisdom, look at what happened. I
Mm,
mean, look at what Mr. Biden had, President Biden. I must give him his respect. I will not call the other person president or whatever. But my thing is, and that's my preference. I do respect the person. That's why I said Mr. Trump. But uh, President Biden inherited this mess. Look at what happened. If we
he
didn't
did.
have anybody stable in office to take care of this situation, we'd be in trouble. Really, really. Well, think about it. He told us to drink bleach and all kinds
I
of stuff,
forgot
and
about that. Oh my gosh. I
it'll magically disappear. Take a
forgot.
horse tranquilizer, and people here in the South were going to the different feed stores and everything, trying to find this stuff that this man said shoot up,
Oh
and
my
you're
gosh.
shooting up hog and hog and cattle, some kind of tranquilizer, antibiotic or something that they. Well, what crazy person? That's why when Dr. Fauci, who was restricted from Dr. Fauci, Center for Disease Control, and he was the czar of the pandemic czar that was trying to help us in the best way that he could, tried to warn us that, look, that's not going to work. Drink some bleach. Are you kidding me? Shoot some bleach in here
Listen,
and this and that.
if you
But
want to end up in
yeah,
the ICU, drink bleach. If
the
you want,
ICU, you're
if
going to
you
be on
want,
the Undertaker table.
yeah, if you want to have the
God.
insides of your body basically like burn like acid, then drink bleach. If you desire to no longer live in this world, and you'd like to meet Jesus now, drink bleach. I completely forgot that he had said that. I remember now. Some of that is such a blur. So there are things that Donald Trump has made claims to, but of course those things are not accurate because of what happened in the pandemic. So here's the first thing. So Donald Trump and President Biden both kind of misrepresented inflation. So here's what was said. They had inflation of the real number. This is Donald Trump. So Donald Trump says they had inflation of the real number. If you really get into the real number, it's probably 40% or 50% when you add things up. When you don't just put in the numbers that they want to hear. This is what Donald Trump said at a campaign event in Detroit in June. I think it could be as high as 50% if you add everything in. When you start adding energy prices in, when you start adding interest rates. This is what he said in a June interview on Fox News. Now, the problem is this is misleading. Okay. So, Carolyn Levitt, a spokeswoman for the Trump campaign, cited a 41% increase in energy prices since January 2021 and prices for specific energy costs like gasoline rising more than 50% during that time. But the most widely used measure for overall inflation, which is the consumer price index, has increased by about 20% since January 2021, less than half of Mr. Trump's estimate. Year over year, inflation peaked at 9.1% in June of 2022. Now, in comparison, under Donald Trump, the index cumulatively rose by 7.4% from January 2017 to January 2021. And year to year inflation peaked at 2.9% in July of 2018. The index does not include energy prices. But Donald Trump is right that it has not included interest rates since the 1980s for a variety of reasons. Now, in a 1982 paper explaining why the CPI would take into account rental costs rather than mortgage rates, economists from the Bureau of Labor Statistics wrote that mortgages were in part investments for the future, for some people, while the inflation index should focus only on current consumption. Now, if interest rates were included in the CPI and given a heavy enough weight in the calculation, it's possible that the resulting index could have risen by 50% under Biden. This is what was said by Judge Kramer, an economist from Harvard University. Okay. Now, she has rejected Donald Trump's characterization of an index that factored in interest rates as a more accurate gauge or real rate of inflation. Donald Trump just doesn't know what he's talking about, and he just pulls numbers out of
No.
his backside. He just does.
Yeah.
So
But then
nobody
you
really,
remember the lie that he told. He said, if I'm not reelected, the whole stock market and the index is going to crash. Well, this
he did,
morning,
he did say that.
the Dow Jones Industrial Average was 39.16. It's been up. Oh, the country's going to crash and we're going to go into oblivion. Here's somebody, wisdom, that has filed for bankruptcy. Look at Atlantic City. All you got to do is look at Atlantic City. All of those, the Taj Mahals and all those other things that are over there, and all those closed up businesses, and the many times that uh, this person filed for bankruptcy, and and how many times he swung. I wouldn't take no business advice from him, no way. And people, I don't understand it. Somebody, please let me know, what is it about this person? We don't want to lock him up. He's a criminal. He said that he could unalive somebody on Fifth Avenue, and he almost got away with this. And we got federal judges on the bench that's making loopholes and everything for him. And it took Judge Merchan in your sacred city of New York City. I'll always have respect for the New York City justices that made up, and those that sat on the jury, that
Mm-hmm.
said this man needs, look, y'all, we're going to show y'all what y'all need to do with this person. I wouldn't take any advice from him, no financial advice,
No,
other than what.
absolutely.
Yeah, I wouldn't do that, not me.
This is not The Apprentice. This is real life. This is not some game show, talk show, reality show. This is real life. So here's what Biden said, okay? Because like I said, we're being fair, and they both kind of misrepresented some things. Biden not as there wasn't as big of a disparity as Trump. Biden said, I think inflation has slightly gone up. It was at 9% when I came in, and now it's down around 3%. Now, he said this in a May interview with Yahoo Finance, but that was false because year over year inflation was 1.4% in January of 2021 when Biden took office. It peaked at 9.1% in June of 2022, more than a year into his presidency, and has fallen to 3.3% in May. So he was off by 0.3%. He wasn't really that far off. Anyway, Donald Trump made
But can
false
I
claims.
can I buy can I buy a loaf of bread? Can I get me some groceries? I know it's a little high. You said something about the supply chain. I
Yeah,
mean, okay, we had problems with goods and services coming into this country because the dock workers were sick, the truck drivers, they had a shortage of truck drivers and everything. So I
there was nobody
I
to
would
work.
take.
There was nobody. Everyone was sick. There was nobody to work. They had containers, shipping containers, just sitting on the docks with nobody to move them for months and months and months on end. I mean, even when I moved into my house, it took us like 6 months to get a refrigerator and get, bed and all those things. Let me move on to Donald Trump's false claims about job growth under President Biden. So Donald Trump said at a Detroit event, 100% of the jobs created have gone to illegals. Now, again, this is false. Official estimates of employment do not support Donald Trump's statement, and estimates from various groups show that the population of unauthorized immigrants has grown in recent years, but not nearly enough to take all the jobs created during Biden's presidency. And I distinctly remember someone who was in our chat yesterday talking about this and basically stating that the immigrants are basically taking all our jobs. And that's one of the problems. And that's why we're doing this, because you have people that are just reciting what Donald Trump is saying and they're not fact checking him. Well, Donald Trump, we're fact checking you today. Two groups that advocate lower levels of migration and stricter border security have estimated that there are 2.3 million to 2.5 million more unauthorized immigrants in 2023 than 2020. Now, again, those numbers are quite inflated. That's the word of the day. The word of the day is inflation, because nobody was really traveling in 2020. It was the pandemic. Nobody was really traveling too much in 2021. And so it may seem like all of a sudden, by the time Biden takes office, now all these people are flooding in. Well, guess what? No one had been able to travel for quite some time. And so again, it's misleading. One group, the Center for Immigration Studies, estimated a total population of 12.8 million, while the other, the Federation for American Immigration Reform, pinned the number at 16.8 million. That's a big disparity. The economy has added more than 15 million jobs since January of 2021. So when people say, well, Biden hasn't done anything, well, besides loan forgiveness, we talked about it yesterday, he's added 15 million jobs. That's a lot. So Ms. Levitt, the Trump campaign spokeswoman, cited an increase of 414,000 foreign-born workers in May, compared with a decrease of 663,000 native-born workers last month. But monthly fluctuations do not tell the entire story. And this is what we're talking about. It's very easy to throw numbers around, but you've got to put those numbers in perspective. So, for example, in April, the number of foreign-born workers decreased by a little over 600,000, and the number of native-born workers increased by 866,000. Well, the Bureau of Labor Statistics estimated that 29.9 million foreign-born workers, both authorized and unauthorized, and 131.1 million native-born workers were employed in 2023. That's an increase of 5.1 million in employed foreign-born workers and 8.1 million native-born workers since 2020. Because again, after the pandemic, there were a lot of vacant jobs. People had to come back to work. There were a lot of people who chose to do other things. A lot of people didn't go back to work. So restaurants and all these companies had a lot of vacancies. Now, Donald Trump also said at a May rally in Wisconsin that under Biden, 0 manufacturing jobs were created in the month of March. You know that, right? 0. I don't think that's ever happened. 0, it's hard to do. 0. This is Donald Trump talking. Well, that's false, because the manufacturing sector did shed about 6,000 total jobs from February to March. But Donald Trump is wrong that this is unprecedented. And the truth of the matter is, since the Bureau of Labor Statistics began tracking monthly manufacturing employment in 1939, the sector has lost jobs in about 40% of the months. That's normal. You're talking about manufacturing jobs. And so we are improving with our technology. Factories are closing and things like that. Under Donald Trump's own presidency, employment in that sector declined in 7 months out of 12 in 2019, even before the coronavirus pandemic hit, and in the first 4 months of 2020. So again, you have to be very careful when you're listening to Donald Trump, because he throws things out there and he takes things out of context, and half of it he just makes it up. And so
Just call him a liar. Right. He's a liar.
Yeah, I was trying to be nice, but yeah, I mean, we might just have to call him what he is. I was trying to be nice, James. Now Biden said that we've already created 15 million new jobs. That's a record. And so they wanted to put that into context a little bit, not to say that he wasn't truthful in that, but we've got to put it into context. So the economy added 15.6 million jobs from January 2021, the month when Biden took office, to May. By raw numbers, that's a larger increase in new jobs over 3 years than the number added over the other president's 4-year term since at least 1945. So that was unprecedented, actually. But by percentage, President Biden's first 40 months still lagged behind the job growth of some of his recent predecessors' full terms. So he kind of set a record for that short period. But again, he was coming out of a pandemic, and we wanted these businesses to reopen. We wanted restaurants to be open. And so there were a lot of vacant jobs. The economy also added 10.9% more jobs under President Biden so far, compared with 11.2% in President Reagan's second term and 12.8% in President Carter's 4 years in office. So, when you compare that, you can kind of say that, he did a little bit better than his predecessors, but it's not exactly an equivalent comparison. So again, we're looking at both sides of the coin. We're not just picking on Donald Trump. So the candidates also talked about 2017 tax cuts, right? Because they were going back and forth over that. So Donald Trump said they want to quadruple your taxes. They're going to let them expire. They're going to give you the biggest tax increase you've ever had, ever, by 4 times. This is what Donald Trump is saying again at a campaign event in Detroit in June. They're going to let them expire. They're going to give you the biggest tax increase you've ever had, ever, by 4 times. I have spoken to some of my friends who are Trumpers and asked them why. Why did you vote for Donald Trump the first time? And almost every single time, the answer had to do with the fact that they had a business and they felt that they were going to get better tax breaks and that it was going to be advantageous for them as business owners to vote for Donald Trump. Had nothing to do with them liking the man, had nothing to do with his indiscretions or the lies that he's told or haven't told or any of those things. It all had to do with their own personal gain. And they felt that they would get, a better deal under Trump because they have businesses. So what Donald Trump said was false, because many elements of the 2017 tax cut that Trump signed into law will actually expire in 2025. And so Biden has proposed some tax increases on high income earners and corporations, but this doesn't amount to quadrupling taxes. So again, not sure where Donald Trump is getting those numbers from, but we've seen that a lot where he's exaggerated things very significantly. Now, Biden said he provided a $2 trillion tax cut for the super wealthy, which has done nothing but increase the debt and very little impact on ordinary people and their ability to, function and grow. This is what Biden said. So they're saying that this claim is a bit exaggerated because most Americans, not just those earning the highest incomes, received a tax cut under the 2017 law, despite perceptions to the contrary. The tax cut did increase the federal debt, but some studies showed that it had spurred economic growth. And so again, a little bit of, disparities there. But if you look at what Donald Trump has said and what had to be corrected to the point where they literally said false, I don't see anything here that Biden said where they basically declared his entire claim to be false. They may have said that he needs to kind of, they needs context, right? Or needs further explanation. But what we're seeing in Donald Trump is that he has flat out lied. And so again, those of you who are looking to vote for him, because there are some people who really feel they really don't know that he's not being truthful about exactly what he did and what those numbers really actually represent. And those are the people that we want to reach. We want you to make an educated decision about who you're going to vote for. We want to make sure that we put out the best information for you. So we're going to cut to a quick commercial break. And when we come back, we're going to get into part 2 of Donald Trump's agenda. And if he wins, what this country will look like.
You're listening to The Morning Takeover with Wisdom's Daughter and James Mack on 92.7 WKRA FM, your station for information and inspiration. Breaking news, current events, and trending stories on The Morning Takeover at 9. Wisdom's Daughter and James Mack are dominating the airways with the Morning Takeover on 92.7 WKRA FM, your station for information and inspiration. Would you like to advertise your business on the radio? We're seeking sponsors for the Morning Takeover. Space is limited, so act now. Send an email to morningtakeoverjw@gmail.com for more information. You're listening to The Morning Takeover with Wisdom's Daughter and James Mack on 92.7 WKRA FM, your station for information and inspiration.
And we are back. So we're going to be talking about Donald Trump. We're going to be talking specifically about his agenda, the shocking truth about his agenda. We started this yesterday. Just to give you a quick recap of what we talked about. So Donald Trump has plans to crack down on illegal immigration to an extreme degree. And so that includes carrying out mass deportations. That includes an increase in the number of ICE raids, or increase the number of agents for ICE raids, I should say. That includes building camps to detain immigrants, pushing for other countries to take would-be asylum seekers from the United States, to once again ban into the United States people from certain Muslim-majority nations, and to end birthright citizenship. He also stated that he wanted to use the Justice Department to prosecute his adversaries, including directing a criminal investigation into President Biden and his family, having foes indicted for challenging him politically, and targeting journalists for prosecution. He said he wanted to increase presidential power, bringing independent agencies under presidential control, reviving the practice of impounding funds, stripping employment protections from tens of thousands of longtime civil servants, purging officials from intelligence agencies, law enforcement, and State Department and the Pentagon, and appointing lawyers who would bless his agenda as lawful. So what we did not get into yesterday was talking about trade. And so as a part of Donald Trump's Project 2025, he wants to upend trade and other economic policies. At the risk of disrupting the economy in hopes of transforming it, Donald Trump plans to impose new tariffs on most goods manufactured abroad. Economists say his broader agenda, including on trade, deportations, and taxes, could cause prices to rise. Now, Donald Trump has said he will do the following. He will impose a universal baseline tariff, a new tax on most imported goods. All right. Trump has said that he plans to impose a tariff on most goods made overseas, floating a figure of 10% for a new import tax. On top of rising prices for consumers, such a policy would risk a global trade war that would actually hurt American exporters. Okay. What about those who actually export goods to other countries? He also said that he wanted to implement steep new trade restrictions on China. He's talked about this in great length. He said that he will phase out all Chinese imports of electronics and other essential goods and impose new rules to stop U.S. companies from making investments in China. The two countries are the largest economies in the world and exchange hundreds of billions of dollars of goods each year. Now, that one is interesting because we talked about it in the previous segment that Donald Trump but he actually dropped the ball during the pandemic. He made a number of mistakes that led to supply chain issues and a number of things. And one of the mistakes that he made was giving away the majority of the national stockpile to China. So once the pandemic hit here in the United States, we had nothing. We had no ventilators. We had no N95 mask. We didn't have a lot of the things that we needed. He also said that he wants to slash rules imposed on business interests. He has vowed to revive his deregulatory agenda and go further into curbing the so-called administrative state agencies that issue rules for corporations, such as limits aimed at keeping the air and water clean and ensuring that food, drugs, cars, and consumer products are safe. But that can cut into business profits. So basically, business profits are more important than food, drugs, cars, and safe consumer goods. Okay. He also wants to extend and expand tax cuts. Donald Trump has said that he would extend the tax cuts from his 2017 tax law that are set to expire, including for all levels of personal income and for large estates. He also privately told business leaders he wants to further lower the corporate tax rate. Then he moves on to military. Donald Trump plans to retreat from military engagement with Europe altogether. Donald Trump has long made it clear that he sees NATO, the country's most important military alliance, as not as a force multiplier with allies, but a drain on American resources, calling them freeloaders. So ultimately, the countries that make up NATO, Donald Trump sees them as freeloaders. They have not been pulling their weight. He stated in the interview that he did with Time Magazine, and he has said that ultimately he will potentially undercut NATO or withdraw the United States from the alliance. While in office, he threatened to withdraw from NATO. On his campaign website, he says he plans to fundamentally reevaluate NATO's purpose, whatever that means, fueling anxiety that he could gut or end the alliance. Second, he wants to settle the Russia-Ukraine war in 24 hours. Trump has claimed that he would end the war in Ukraine in a day. He has not said how, but he has said that he would have made a deal to prevent the war by letting Russia simply take Ukrainian lands. So that is how he intends to solve the Russia-Ukraine war. Just let them take their land. And finally, he wants to use military force in Mexico and on American soil. Donald Trump has been more clear about his plans for using U.S. military force closer to home. He said that he would, 1, declare war on drug cartels in Mexico. He has released a plan to fight Mexican drug cartels with military force. It would violate international law if the United States used armed forces on Mexican soil without its consent. But this is Donald Trump. Who cares? He wants to increase presidential power. He wants this country to be a dictatorship, an autocracy, instead of a democracy, and he can do what he wants. Secondly, he wants to use federal troops at the border. While it's generally illegal to use the military for domestic law enforcement, the Insurrection Act creates an exception. The Trump team would invoke it to use soldiers as immigration agents. Well. And finally, he wants to use federal troops in Democratic-controlled cities. He came close to unleashing the active duty military on racial justice protests that sometimes descend into riots in 2020 and remains attracted to the idea. So ultimately, the next time, he said he will unilaterally send federal forces to bring order to Democratic-run cities. This is what we have to look forward to if Donald Trump becomes our next president. James, I know you have a lot to say. Come with it. What do you think about all this? What do you think about his trade and economic policies? What do you think about him using the military and pulling out of Europe? What do you think about him using the military as a force on Mexican soil and against Democratic-controlled cities? What is that?
I'll make this really short. And this, for me, that's a miracle, but I'm going to try my best. Number
we
one.
got time.
I know we do, but I don't want. Number one, when you look at what was inherited and what was created, well, first, what was created and what was inherited. This man shouldn't have never been president of the United States or any other country thereof, period. He doesn't have the experience. His failed businesses did not make him eligible. Ronald Reagan was an actor. Okay, he was governor. He did try. He was governor of California. He did have some kind of scruples about himself. He did not call soldiers losers that fought for this country and defended our rights to wave a flag. He did not do those things. He didn't, even though that there was Reaganomics and there was some problems with the economy. Well, the economists and those that are in the stock markets and in the financial markets, kind of create. Greed created it. A certain segment of society and of America, you get the tax breaks, but those of us that work hard, punch that clock for a living, we have to make up the brunt of making sure that this country runs. Because if we can't make this country run, all of the corporations are getting all of the money. Uh, it makes no sense to me. Number two, when this person openly showed everybody, this is who I am. He tried to keep it quiet and pay off certain people. I won't mention those people's names because I think that they've been worn out a little bit, but y'all know where I'm going, up there in New York when they had to take him up there and get the verdict. He tried to hide it. He tried to make sure that nobody knew what was going on. And look at his track record. I feel for New York that they had to deal with his father, and then they had to turn around with dealing with him. He gave the facade of success. He gave the impression that he was a gazillionaire. He gave the impression that jet setting and drinking and the lifestyles of rich and famous and champagne and caviar fountains everywhere and gold toilets was important. It was more important. Who need a gold toilet? I need to go. I mean, come on. I mean, eccentric. No, that's just plain
I'll
outrageous. That the toilet,
toilet.
what you
I'll take
you
the gold
put.
toilet. Beyonce has the 24 karat gold toilet.
Even
I'll take
she's crazy too. She's nuts too. What you gonna do with all it? What is it good for? The toilet is for what the toilet is for. But we need a gold toilet. That just goes to show you the greed that's there. And brings me back to when we were talking about our news story. These same people that endorse this person to be the next president again won't even give poor communities an opportunity to receive Medicaid and Medicare. Yet we're going to give the big corporations all of these tax breaks. Donald Trump paid 720 some odd dollars in federal tax. A billionaire not paying his own fair share. And this is who we want to lead. I'm going to do away with all of the regulations and all the restrictions that the Democratic administration did. I'm going to do away with them. Why? Why are you hurting people? Everybody here is not rich. Everybody that don't look like me is not rich. There's a certain elite that he's pecking on their door. I don't understand it to save my life. Why am I satisfying these people and workers can't get any increase in pay? But the corporations and the CEOs can get million and billion dollar perks and benefits. But I got to go to the store and deal with the inflation that they created because this man said drink bleach and do all these other things. And then they got mad because he had to send something. These people were dying. Millions of people died around the world, and he didn't care about nothing. Then he got COVID, gave everybody else COVID at their little champagne party in the Rose Garden that they did. They're swearing in those justices and everything. Everybody got COVID. He was breathing hard. He didn't know what to do. He tried his best to hold up, but they had to rush him to the hospital and hook him up. And that's just me. I got passionate about it because what kind of people have we become, or people that would even consider? Here he is with 34 felonies, and my nephew, your son, if he got one, or if he got, God forbid, I'm not putting that out there. I don't want to put that out. Young people of all ages and all races get a felony on their record. They can't get a job. You can't even join the military with a felony, and this guy got 34 and he'll be the commander in chief. Something is wrong with the psyche of America. We blame this, oh, it's a percentage point, it's this, it's that. The stock market has not been this high ever, record highs. Somebody's making some money. We got to figure out where the money is. Because I'm sure not getting it. We're not getting it. We're not getting our fair share. I'm not saying we're all supposed to be contribute. It would be nice, but I wouldn't look down on anybody. Coming back to reeling it in a little bit more. Do we live in a democracy, or are we going to live in a dictatorship? Wisdom, and that was
I mean,
9 minutes.
that's a really great question. Are we Are we going to live in a democracy, or are we going to allow someone to come into office who wants to turn this country into an autocracy, a dictatorship? No one person should have that kind of power. That's the whole premise behind democracy, that it's for the people. So the people should choose, the people should have a say. The people want to put someone in office who's going to look out, for them. And see, oftentimes we are selfish as voters. We vote for what's going to benefit us personally. I just mentioned about some friends of mine who basically stated that they voted for Donald Trump because they felt like it would benefit their businesses. But what's good for one or a few may be to the detriment of most. And here's the thing. We know that this country was built off of the backs of slave labor, right? And so the descendants of those very same people still live in this country. And so if we don't thrive, they don't thrive. And that's the thing that I don't think some of these Republicans and some of these white evangelicals and some of these white supremacists don't understand. It takes all of us. You couldn't build this country with just white people. So you attempted to use the indigenous people who were here, got them sick, almost, eradicated a whole group of people with illness. And then you went to another continent, and maybe originally it was indentured servitude, and then eventually stole millions of people, hundreds of millions of people. All right. To build your country for you because you couldn't do it yourself. You needed us then, you need us now. It's important that everyone thrives because we're only as strong as our weakest link. And so when you have a weak link in the chain, it compromises the entire chain. That's what these Republicans don't understand. So when they're putting policies in place to undermine Black employment, Black education, when they're putting policies in place to make it difficult for people to become citizens in this country, we may have a high number of immigrants in this country, but let's just be real. How many of you who've had work on your house? How many of you had someone from South America, someone from Mexico, doing work in your house because they do great work and it's cheap labor? They do good quality work. They show up on time and they don't charge a whole lot. Let's be clear. You have immigrants who will come into this country and take the jobs that nobody else wants, right? Who wants a job cleaning out septic tanks and pipes and working underground and working in caves? So when people make blanket statements, oh, the immigrants are taking all our jobs. What jobs? What corporate jobs do you see illegal immigrants working? You see them working as working in hospitals as janitors, cleaning ladies. You see them working as maids in hotels. You see them cleaning, people's houses and babysitting, your spoiled, rotten kids. What jobs are they really taking? You see them working in the kitchen, cleaning dishes, bussing tables. Are they really taking the good jobs, the high-paying jobs, or are they just taking the jobs that nobody else wanted? Because a lot of these people still struggle with the English language. And so they can't really take the jobs that are really. So what money are they really taking from you? What food are they really taking out of your mouth? It bothers me to the fullest. And so I think there are many people in power in the White House. I'll say the White House. I can say that. But in politics who are looking at this all wrong. If you don't bring us up to the same standard and level, and when I say us, I'm talking about the middle working class, I'm talking about the lower class, I'm talking about poor Black communities, I'm talking about, you can even say poor white communities. But if you don't help the poor, regardless of what color they are, and bring them up to a higher standard, those people will always bring you down. They'll be dead weight always, and you'll constantly be fighting a battle. The challenge of this country is that we have somehow convinced ourselves that the way for us to get a leg up is to step and stand on everybody else. Take your foot off our neck. Help us so we can help you. And then maybe we won't be struggling as much, right? Let's close and fix the weak links in the chain. And then we can all be stronger together. That's my take on it. That's how I feel about it. And until we start looking at this country and the future of America and what America was designed to be through a new set of eyes, a new set of lenses, we're not going to get where we need to be. We will constantly be in this battle, this struggle. For every 2 steps forward, we will take 1 back, which means we won't really get anywhere. This idea of Jim Crow, those days were better, is a joke. The idea of make America great again is a joke. America has never really been that great. We're still on that journey towards greatness, but we are far from it. Let's just make America great. Take off the again. Let's just make America great. Let's do our part. Let's look out for everyone and not just give it tax advantages to the rich. Because there are more poor people and middle class people and lower class people in this country. The rich, they are a very small percentage. And if all the working class and the lower class and the poor, white, black, and indifferent left this country, the rich people that were left here wouldn't be able to make it. You know what would happen? They would be talking about how they can get on some ships and go back to Africa and get some more people. They wouldn't make it. A figure 8, if you draw your finger on a figure 8, is going to bring you back to the middle every single time. Because we're all connected. Everything is all connected. Racism is not the answer. Dictatorship is not the answer. Autocracy is not the answer. More power to the president, not the answer. Building cages to put people in and leave them there for God knows how long until we can kick them back into whatever country they came from. You know, it's like go back to Africa all over again, but we're doing it with illegal immigrants, and we're primarily talking about people of Latin American descent because they're the highest numbers coming into this country. That's not the answer either. Definitely not the answer. Utilizing the military to govern democratic cities? What are you trying? That's not the answer. Pulling out of NATO is not the answer. Trying to fix the Russia-Ukrainian issue by letting Russia just take these people's land and get it over with is not the answer. Trump, in my opinion, is not the answer. Trump ain't it. He's not qualified to do much of anything, let alone be the president. And as James said, he really should not have been president the first time. He talks about the election being rigged, but it's really him who stole that election. We all know it. He's not qualified. We need somebody qualified to be the president. We need somebody who knows politics, who understands the Constitution, who understands how the federal government works, who has just a general understanding of government in general, who has studied, who has a track record. The presidency is not one of these jobs that you can just come into and just learn on the job. Barack Obama made it look real easy. Oh, he made it look real easy. The work that I do, and we've got about 1 minute before we close, someone said, "Oh, what do you do?" So I told them about what I did, and they said, "Oh, yeah, that's cool. How can I get into that?" I said, "Well, first, you need to get a master's degree. And then you're going to need to volunteer for about 3 or 4 years. And then you're going to need to apply for some jobs, and that might take another 2 years for you to get, because I specialize in a field that you can't just walk into on day one and think you're going to be able to do what I do. Try again. It's the same with the presidency. Can't just walk into the White House and sit down in the Oval Office and think all you have to do is sign some papers and bark orders. Donald Trump, it doesn't work that way. That's not going to work. America deserves better. Thank you guys so much for listening. You've been listening to the Morning Takeover with James and Wisdom. Tomorrow, we will be coming back to talk about what you can expect potentially with the upcoming debate on Thursday. We will also talk about the Supreme Court, who's hearing a challenge against Tennessee law banning transition care for minors. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time, we'll see you back here tomorrow, same time, same place.
Wisdom's Daughter and James Mack are dominating the airways with the Morning Takeover on 92.7 WKRA FM, your station for information and inspiration. Would you like to advertise your business on the radio? We're seeking sponsors for the Morning Takeover. Space is limited, so act now. Send an email to morningtakeoverjw@gmail.com for more information. You're listening to The Morning Takeover with Wisdom's Daughter and James Mack on 92.7 WKRA FM, your station for information and inspiration.